that previous analysis is a bit mysterious because it doesn't really explain the economics of what's going on. And so now that's what we're going to turn to. So remember that an individual's taxes are getting reduced from T1 to T2. Okay? So the size of the tax cut today, this is the aggregate tax cut, is just n times the change in the individual taxes. And then the tax rise in the future is just n times the individual tax increases in the future. And those are just going to be equal to the individual tax cut plus interest. So future taxes are rising by the future value of the current tax cut. Or you can word it differently and say that current taxes are falling by the present value of the future tax hike. How are we satisfying the government's budget constraints? Well, today, we're cutting taxes and we're financing that by selling more bonds. So remember, delta T is negative, therefore delta B is positive. And then we're paying off those bonds plus interest in the future with higher taxes. Now, in this model, the government can borrow more only if the private sector saves more. So that means that any increase in government borrowing has to be exactly equal to an increase in private savings. And that is the key to this mystery. But why would the private sector increase its savings by exactly the amount of the increase in government borrowing? Well, the reason for this is these consumers are looking into the future when they make decisions today. And they understand that if there's a tax cut today that gets financed by selling bonds, then taxes are going to have to go up in the future. They also understand that they can earn on their savings the same interest rate that the government pays on borrowing. Now, that's an assumption, but that's the way this model is working. So all they have to do then is they take their tax cut today, they save it, they earn R on it. So 1 plus R times the tax cut is what they then receive in the future. But it turns out that's exactly what their increase in taxes is going to be in the future. So they use their earnings from their savings to pay those future taxes. And if they behave in this manner, then they can continue to consume at that original consumption bundle at that original real interest rate. In this graph, this is the initial endowment. So they're initially paying T1 in taxes. So this is Y minus T1 in units of goods today, and YF minus TF1 in units of goods in the future. Now this consumer has chosen this point A optimally. So therefore, this distance here is their savings in the initial period, S1. But S1 is actually borrowing. That must be the case because they're consuming more than their income. So then you get this tax cut. Taxes go from T1 to T2. So E2 is the after-tax endowment. Now, what does the consumer want to do? And by the way, this horizontal distance here is exactly the change in current taxes. So what does this consumer want to do? Well, she can still consume at point A. Nothing has changed in the budget set. There's been no change in wealth. There's been no change in the real interest rate. So she can continue to consume at point A. But what does she need to do that? Well, now her savings is S2. And the important thing here is that S2 entails less borrowing. So what is this consumer doing? She saves the tax cut by borrowing less today. And that allows her to continue to consume the bundle C star, CF star at point A. So if we pull together the algebra, this is just what I said in that figure. Initial savings is after-tax income less consumption. The new level of savings is the new level of after-tax income less consumption. Notice it's the same C. So the change in savings is just exactly equal to negative the tax cut. And then they use that savings to pay off taxes in the future. So what's happened at the aggregate level? So that's the individual level. At the aggregate level, the change in taxes today is just take N times the individual's change in taxes, and the same thing for the change in taxes tomorrow. And these policies have to satisfy the government's budget constraints. So the government today just finances the tax cut by selling bonds, and then finances the bonds in the future by raising future taxes. So this is just repeating the changes that we just went through. And what's happening in the credit market then is that the change in government borrowing exactly equals the change in private savings. So that is the key to understanding Ricardian equivalence. We have individuals who look into the future, understand that if the government cuts taxes today and finances them by selling more bonds, then the government's going to raise taxes in the future. In anticipation of those higher taxes, what the consumer does is she takes today's tax cut and saves it. In this model, she earns the same interest that the government pays on the bonds, and therefore she can use the proceeds from her savings to just cover the taxes in the future. And therefore we get the Ricardian result that whether you tax today or tax in the future is irrelevant to consumers.